Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're tackling something that's pretty fundamental to all of us, money.
Right.
We're going to trace its evolution, from its earliest forms all the way to the digital age we live in now. So
Yeah.
if you've ever wondered, how we went from bartering to Bitcoin,
Right.
this deep dive is for you. And no prior finance knowledge is required. We're starting from scratch.
Absolutely.
I think it's safe to say that most of us probably don't spend a whole lot of time, pondering the history of money.
Right. I mean, who does?
But it's actually
That's a pretty
a
fun.
pretty fascinating story.
Yeah. And
That's not
it might surprise you
Yeah.
to learn, how different money used to be.
Yeah.
Did you know, for example, that on the island of Yap, people used giant stone discs as currency?
Giant stone discs. Really?
Yeah. I'm talking, seriously, massive stones, way too big to move around easily.
That's wild. So how did they even, pay for things with those? I mean, did they just roll them around or something?
No, not quite. It was actually more about social trust and shared knowledge. Everyone in the community knew who owned which stone, even if the stones themselves, never actually moved.
So it was like this early version of, a public ledger.
Exactly. It shows that money isn't always about a physical object. It can be, more like a symbol of value
Right.
that we all agree on.
Yeah, that makes you think about how, even today, a lot of our financial system relies on trust. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Before we get to giant stones and, digital currencies, what exactly is money? What makes something money in the first place?
That's a great question. I think it's one that, a lot of people
Yeah.
maybe don't think about every day. But at its core, money has these three main functions.
Okay.
It acts as a medium of exchange,
Okay.
a unit of account, and then a store of value.
Okay, so break that down for us. Like medium of exchange, what does that mean?
So that means you can use it to buy things, right? So instead of trading,
Yeah.
your extra blanket for a loaf of bread.
Bartering.
Exactly, bartering.
Yeah.
We both agree to use money as this common way to exchange goods and services.
Right. So it kind of streamlines the whole process.
Exactly.
Makes it a lot easier.
It acts as this intermediary
Yeah.
that makes trading much smoother than bartering.
Okay. And what about unit of account? Does that just mean we use money to, measure the value of things?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Money provides a standard way to compare the value of different goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
So, a loaf of bread might cost $3, while a new car might cost $30,000. So money helps us make sense of those relative values.
Right, so it helps us compare, apples and oranges. Or, in this case, bread and cars.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay. And lastly, store of value. So that basically means we expect the money we save today will be worth something tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. Money allows us to save purchasing power for the future.
Right.
Of course, things like inflation can affect,
Yeah.
how much our money will buy down the line. But the basic idea
Right.
is that money lets us save for the future.
Got it. So we've got a pretty good handle now on, what money is.
Yeah.
But how did we actually get here? Where did this whole thing begin? I mean, was it always like this?
Well, before money as we know it, there was bartering, where people directly exchanged goods and services.
Right.
You can imagine how complicated that could get.
Yeah.
Trying to find someone who had what you needed and also needed what you had to offer.
It sounds
It must have been a real challenge.
Yeah, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
So no wonder people came up with something better.
Right, exactly.
How did they even...
And one of the earliest forms of money
Yeah.
that emerged was something called commodity money.
Oh, commodity money.
So this is where goods that had inherent value, things like grain or livestock or salt,
Okay.
were used as a medium of exchange.
So instead of carrying around, a bunch of different goods for bartering,
Right.
people just started using things like,
Exactly.
grain or cattle as, this common form of payment.
Exactly. It simplified trade considerably.
Yeah. By show.
Could you imagine
Yeah.
lugging sacks of grain to
Yeah.
the market every time you want to buy something?
I can already feel my back hurting just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And, storing all that grain.
Yeah.
Must have been a nightmare.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it makes sense why they eventually moved on
Yeah.
from commodity money.
Right,
So
right.
what came next?
So from commodity money, we see this emergence of something that totally revolutionized trade. Coinage.
Ah, the good old coins.
Yeah. So around the 7th century BC, the Lydians in what is now Turkey, they started minting these standardized coins from electrum. It was an alloy of gold and silver.
Okay.
So basically...
So instead of hauling around a cow, you could just jingle some coins in your pocket.
Exactly.
Right. Much easier.
Yeah, that's a definite improvement.
Right. And these coins, they had standard weights, and they were stamped with these images to indicate their value. This made trade much more efficient and reliable.
So it was like the first official currency, like backed by a government.
That's a really key point, actually. The Lydian government, they played this crucial role in ensuring that the coins were consistent and that the value, was reliable, which helped them gain wide acceptance. And then this innovation, it quickly spread throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. And it really laid the groundwork for modern coinage as we know it today.
Wow, that's incredible. And I bet it made trade a whole lot easier for everyone involved.
Absolutely, yeah.
But even with coins, there still had to be further developments, right? Like, what happened when people needed to make larger transactions? I mean, were they just walking around with, like, bags of coins?
Yeah, I know, right? That doesn't seem very practical.
Yeah, carrying large sums of coins, it could be risky and, really impractical. And that's where we see paper money kind of entering the picture.
Okay, paper money. Now, that's a huge leap from carrying around bags of grain or metal.
Right. It is a big change.
So how did that work exactly? Like, when did that start?
So the earliest forms of paper money can actually be traced back to China.
Okay.
During the Tang Dynasty. This is in the 7th century.
Wow.
So initially, these paper notes were basically receipts for commodities like gold or silver that were deposited with merchants.
So it's like an early IOU.
Yeah, think of it like an early form of an IOU. And then over time, these receipts became more widely accepted as payment. And eventually they evolved into this government-issued currency.
So paper money started as like a representation of like a promise to pay in, like a valuable commodity.
Yeah.
And then eventually became its own form of currency.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
That's fascinating. And is this when the whole concept of like fiat currency came about?
You're catching on quickly. So during the Song Dynasty, a few centuries later, the paper money in China actually transitioned into this fiat currency.
Okay, fiat currency, break that down for me. What does that actually mean?
Okay, so fiat currency basically means that its value is based on government decree rather than being directly backed by like a physical commodity like gold.
Hold on. So the money we use today, like the dollar, it's essentially based on trust in the government.
Yeah, pretty much. It relies on this belief that the government will maintain the value and stability of the currency.
It's kind of a...
Think about it, like the paper itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have much intrinsic value. It's really the trust we place in the issuing authority that gives it worth.
That's a pretty big leap of faith, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a lot different from those early forms of money where like the value was so clearly tied to like something tangible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It highlights how money is just as much a social construct as it is a physical object. It's about shared belief and trust in the system.
This is blowing my mind. So we've gone from like bartering to commodity money to coins to paper money backed by commodity and finally to fiat currency, which is backed by trust in the government. It's incredible to see how money has like evolved over time and how each innovation like built upon the one before it.
Yeah, it really speaks to human ingenuity, doesn't it? Like our ability to find, better, more efficient ways to exchange goods and services. But that's not the end of the story. I mean, as we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive, technology is actually transforming money now in ways we could never have imagined even, a few decades ago.
I'm ready for part 2.
Yeah, me too.
Welcome back, everyone. So last time we journeyed through this incredible history of money, from bartering to the rise of fiat currency. And I have to say, it's amazing how something we use literally every single day has this super fascinating backstory.
Yeah, it really is. It's like a testament to human ingenuity, But as we move into the 21st century, I think we're seeing this other major shift in how we think about and use money.
Right.
And it's really driven by technology.
That's right. We're in this age of digital currencies now. I mean, you've got Bitcoin making headlines all the time.
Right.
And then you've got central banks exploring their own digital versions of money. It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure. I mean, the financial landscape is evolving so rapidly. But don't worry, we're going to break down these complex concepts, into bite-sized pieces. So let's start with central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs for short.
CBDCs, okay, that sounds pretty official.
It does, doesn't it?
Can you, explain what they are in simple terms? So for those of us who, aren't financial experts.
Absolutely. So think of a CBDC as like a digital version of your country's currency, right?
Okay.
It's issued and backed by the central bank.
Sure.
So for instance, the US would have a digital dollar, the Eurozone would have a digital euro, and so on.
Okay. So it's like having digital cash, but instead of being issued by like a commercial bank, it's coming directly from the central bank.
You got it.
Okay. And how is that different from like using Apple Pay or Venmo?
That's a great question, because while platforms like Apple Pay and Venmo make digital payments really convenient, they still operate within that existing banking system. So your money is essentially held in like a commercial bank account.
Right.
And those platforms just kind of facilitate the transfer of funds.
Okay, so they're like the middleman.
Exactly. But with the CBDC, your digital money would be directly tied to the central bank.
Got it. Okay, so that direct link to the central bank, that's what makes CBDCs potentially so impactful.
Right.
I mean, what are the advantages there?
So they could offer advantages in terms of efficiency, security, and financial inclusion.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Like, how would CBDCs be more efficient than, our current system?
Okay, so imagine making a payment, right?
Yeah.
And it settles instantly, 24/7, regardless of bank holidays or operating hours.
Good.
That's the potential of CBDCs, because they would operate on a digital ledger. It's like a high-tech accounting system. Transactions could be processed much faster.
Okay.
And with lower fees than traditional methods.
So no more waiting for checks to clear or those international wire transfers to go through.
Exactly.
That would be amazing, especially for businesses that are, operating globally.
Absolutely. And it's not just about speed and cost, though. CBDCs could also enhance security. Because since they're based on these secure digital ledgers, they'd be highly resistant to fraud and counterfeiting. Think of it like having a digital vault for your money, protected by this advanced cryptography.
Yeah, there definitely sounds a lot more secure than carrying around a wad of cash.
Right.
Or even just relying on traditional bank transfers. Okay, so what about accessibility? I mean, wouldn't people still need smartphones or internet access to actually use CBDCs?
Yeah, that's a really important point. One of the goals of CBDCs is to promote financial inclusion, right? So reaching people who may not have access to traditional banking services. And to address that, they could be designed to work with simpler technologies, even offline in some cases.
So even people in really remote areas or those who don't have smartphones could potentially benefit from CBDCs.
Right. It's a goal that a lot of central banks are really working towards. But of course, like any new technology, CBDCs come with challenges and potential risks too.
Right. I mean, what are some of those?
Well, privacy is probably one of the biggest concerns.
Yeah, I can see how having all transactions recorded on a digital ledger could raise some privacy questions. I mean, would the government be able to track every single purchase we make?
It's a valid concern, and the level of privacy built into a CBDC system would really depend on how it's designed and implemented. So striking that right balance, between transparency and individual privacy is going to be a key consideration for central banks.
It sounds like there's still a lot to figure out when it comes to CBDCs.
Absolutely.
What about the impact on the existing banking system? I mean, would banks become obsolete if everyone starts using central bank digital money?
That's a complicated question. CBDCs could definitely disrupt the role of commercial banks.
Right.
But it's more likely that, they'll coexist with the current system, at least for the foreseeable future, because banks are already adapting to the digital age, and they could play a role in, managing and distributing CBDCs.
Okay. So it seems like the financial world is on the verge of a major transformation, and it's not just CBDCs that are shaking things up. I mean, we also have the rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which is always in the news.
That's right. Cryptocurrencies have introduced a whole new paradigm in finance, one that operates independently of central banks and governments.
I've got to admit, I'm still trying to wrap my head around cryptocurrencies. Can you explain what they are and how they actually work?
Sure. So at their core, Cryptocurrencies are these digital or virtual currencies that use cryptography for security. They operate on decentralized networks, meaning they're not controlled by any single entity, like a central bank.
So they're like digital money that exists outside the traditional financial system.
Exactly.
That's pretty, is both exciting and a little bit scary at the same time. So, what are the main arguments, for and against cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so proponents of cryptocurrencies, they point to their potential to revolutionize finance. They argue that cryptocurrencies can offer greater efficiency, transparency, and security than, traditional systems. And they also highlight the potential for financial inclusion because anyone with an internet connection can participate in the cryptocurrency ecosystem.
So lower costs, faster transactions, more transparency, and greater access to financial services. I mean, I can definitely see why people are excited about cryptocurrencies.
Right.
But what about the downsides? I mean, there have to be some, right?
Of course. One of the biggest criticisms of cryptocurrencies is their volatility. The prices of, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have fluctuated wildly, which makes them risky investments. And there are also concerns about security because there have been instances of hacks and thefts from cryptocurrency exchanges.
Yeah, I've heard those stories about people losing their life savings and cryptocurrency scams and things like that. That's definitely a concern.
Yeah, and then there are concerns about the potential for illicit activities because, the anonymity associated with some cryptocurrencies can be exploited for things like money laundering or other illegal transactions.
So it sounds like cryptocurrencies have their pros and cons, just like any other financial innovation, right? I mean, it seems like the jury's still out on whether they'll eventually become total mainstream or if they'll fizzle out.
Yeah, it's really hard to predict the future, but I think cryptocurrencies have undoubtedly introduced these innovative technologies and concepts that are challenging the status quo in finance. Whether they ultimately succeed or not, I think they've already had a pretty significant impact on how we think about money and its potential.
It's definitely a fascinating time to be following the world of finance.
It is.
So much is changing, and it's hard to know what the future holds. But I think one thing is clear. We need to be having conversations about the ethical and societal implications of all of these technological changes.
I completely agree. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. As we move toward a more digital and decentralized financial system, I think we need to consider how to ensure equitable access, protect privacy, and mitigate the potential for economic inequality.
There's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But they're really important conversations to have as we kind of shape the future of money. And that brings us to the final part of our deep dive, where we're going to explore some potential scenarios for the future of money and what it all means for you. So stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone, to the final part of our deep dive into the evolution of money. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? I mean, from those ancient barter systems to the rise of digital currencies.
It's been quite a journey.
It has been a journey, and now it's time to put on our futurist hats, right?
Right.
And kind of explore what the future of money might actually hold.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing to think about.
It is.
I mean, the financial landscape is changing so quickly, faster than ever before.
Yeah.
So much is uncertain.
But, we can look at the trends that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
And kind of imagine some potential scenarios for the future.
Yeah, let's dive into those scenarios. What are some of the possibilities for, how money might evolve in the coming decades? What are you seeing?
Well, one possibility is the rise of a truly cashless society.
Okay, a cashless society.
So imagine a world where physical cash becomes a rarity, like those old rotary phones you see in museums.
Wow, no more cash at all. I mean, I gotta say, I rarely use cash these days anyway. It really does seem like everything's moving towards those digital payments.
Right. It's definitely a trend that we're seeing accelerating worldwide. And, in this scenario, CBDCs could become the dominant form of money for everyday transactions. And then, private cryptocurrencies, they might find their own niche in specific sectors.
So a future where our wallets are entirely digital? Is that what you're thinking? A mix of CBDCs and maybe some cryptocurrencies. It's pretty mind-boggling to think about.
It is. And, with advancements in technology, it could be a lot more seamless and integrated into our lives than we can even imagine right now.
So what other scenarios are you seeing out there?
Okay, so another possibility is the emergence of a multi-currency world. So imagine a global financial ecosystem where people are seamlessly using like a variety of currencies for different purposes.
Wait, a multi-currency world? So like a global currency marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine choosing the optimal currency for each transaction, right? Based on like speed, cost, security, even social values.
So maybe I'd use like a digital dollar for like my everyday purchases,
Right.
a stable coin for like cross-border payments, and then like a cryptocurrency that's aligned with my ethics, for specific online transactions.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a lot to keep track of.
It would be a more complex landscape, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But technology could help us manage that complexity, by providing like intuitive interfaces and automated systems to kind of simplify that user experience.
Okay, that makes sense. It seems like technology is really going to be like a key driver in shaping the future of money,
Absolutely.
no matter which scenario ends up playing out.
Right.
But technology is only one part of the equation, right?
Right.
What about like regulation? I mean, governments have got to be grappling with like how to manage all these innovations.
Well, you're absolutely right. The regulatory landscape is crucial. I mean, governments around the world are working to really understand digital currencies and to develop the appropriate frameworks that will balance innovation with consumer protection, financial stability. It's a delicate balancing act. It is. They don't want to stifle innovation, but they also need to protect people from, scams and risks.
Yeah, for sure.
We can expect to see like a lot of ongoing debates, evolving regulations as these digital currencies become more and more integrated into our lives. It's something to keep an eye on.
Okay. So it really all boils down to like, what does this all mean for us, the average person? Like, how might these changes in money actually affect our daily lives?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? On the positive side, all of these innovations have the potential to like really empower individuals, right?
Okay. How so?
Well, by giving them more control over their finances, greater access to those financial services, more choices in like how they manage their money.
Oh, like greater financial freedom.
Exactly.
And autonomy.
Exactly. But we also have to acknowledge like the potential risks too.
Right.
We need to be mindful of the digital divide and ensure that everyone has like equal access to these new technologies and opportunities. And then, privacy is another huge concern.
Right. We don't want a future where only the like tech savvy or like the wealthy can actually benefit from these innovations.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that our privacy is protected, especially in a world where financial transactions are increasingly digital and traceable.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like with any powerful technology, we really need to be thoughtful about its implementation and consider those broader societal implications.
It seems like the future of money is just like full of these amazing possibilities, both exciting and challenging.
Yeah.
So what's the like key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with, as they navigate this like ever-evolving landscape of money?
I think the key is to stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged. Like learn about these new technologies, ask questions, participate in the conversation about how we want to shape the future of money. Because the decisions we make today are really going to have a profound impact on the financial world of tomorrow.
Well said. This has been a really incredible journey through the evolution of money, from bartering to bitcoins. It's just amazing to see how human ingenuity has driven this constant evolution. It's really a testament to like our ability to adapt and innovate, to find new and better ways to exchange value and build a more prosperous future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of money. Until next time, keep exploring.